people who will join. So I have the privilege and pleasure of doing the introductions for this session, and welcome again to everybody that's joined. We are delighted that we've got 3 people from the Re-Imagining Bookstores group in the US with us today. Eben and I have been following this for quite a while, so we are really thrilled that you're able to come and talk to us about what the group does. So we have Praveen Madan, is that how you say your surname, Praveen Madan? Who says he is obsessed with a strong and exciting future for bookstores. He successfully led Kepler's from the brink of closure to becoming one of the most innovative and thriving bookstores in the country, and has been informally advising bookstores and their community champions on new sustainable models. Amanda Hall is an emeritus advisor of Kepler's Books and Magazines in Menlo Park, California. A former small business owner from Chicago, she has channeled her retail knowledge and passion for books into Kepler's new mission-based model that supports community engagement, sustainability, and staff welfare. She has a BS in journalism from Northwestern University and a master's in social work from the University of Illinois. So we might pull those different threads out a bit during this session, Amanda. And finally, but by no means least, we're delighted that Peggy Holman can also join the team. Peggy supports diverse groups in facing complex issues by turning presentation into conversation and passivity into participation, which I love. That's a great phrase. In the Change Handbook, Holman and her co-authors profile 61 practices that engage people in creating their desired future. Her award-winning book, Engaging Emergence, Turning Upheaval into Opportunity, provides a roadmap for tackling complex challenges through stories, principles, and practices. So welcome to all of you. And I think, Praveen, are we going to start with you in terms of the presentation? There'll be time for questions at the end.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we're going to start. We would love to start with a question for the attendees. And in order to just tailor our presentation and remarks, we were hoping that we can just go around and hear from all of you on what's the question you hope to answer by attending today's conversation and being part of today's conversation. So in no particular order, if you guys want to just go around and tell us, that will inform, what we focus on. And Sam, you and Eben as well.
Okay, shall I start and then Eben can follow, and then Eben, if you hand on to somebody else, how's that? Because we're a small enough group. I think through the research that we've been doing and connection with booksellers in the UK, we know that this kind of community aspect of bookselling and the role of the bookseller and making sure that that's a more professionally recognised job is something that's been coming talked about a lot over here. And so that's really what I'm looking forward to learning more about, is how Reimagining Bookstores is kind of supporting booksellers over in the US, and maybe lessons that we can bring to the UK from that.
Great.
I'm interested in the community stuff. I'm looking at it from a sustainability of the bookstore point of view. We're looking at this as a way to make bookstores a bit more sustainable through community engagement. I'm just wondering how that has been working out for people. And I'll pass on to Anna.
Hi. Yeah, so I've been working on sort of I guess selling books with algorithms, you would say. So I'm interested in how books get sold online. And so obviously what you're going to be talking about today is the opposite of that. And so I guess what I'm thinking about is what humans can do in bookselling that computers can't do in bookselling, which seems very obvious, but I think I'm just interested in hearing more about that. And I can. Evan, do you want to pass it, or should I pass it?
Anna, you pass on.
Okay, Amanda, go ahead.
Ooh, no, I'm the one asking the question.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So Amanda and Praveen and Peggy are all
yes.
We're all presenters. Okay, wonderful. Julie.
Thanks. I study feminist and lesbian feminist publishers in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And of course, the Feminist Bookstore Network was an important part of how those publishers got their works out into the world. And so I'm kind of interested in what's happening today. That's it seems to me some of it follows and is inspired by models of feminist bookstores. I also edit a literary journal, and of course, there's been a complete collapse of distribution for all literary journals in the United States. So I'm always kind of curious what's going on in the more commercial sector of getting books into the world.
Thank you.
And
You want to pass on, Julie?
Let's see. So it looks like if Marie has a comment, Nayantara is ill with no voice. Hope you feel better.
So I'll read Nayantara. I've been researching bookselling in India, where there's been a lot of recent nascent organizing and new initiatives. So I'm just always interested in hearing about initiatives in other countries. So thank you for finding a way of bringing your voice.
Is that everyone? Or are we going to hear from Marie?
Marie, did you have anything you'd like to speak? Oh.
Okay. Sounds like that's it.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, let's get started. And let me just share this.
By the way, something I'll mention, because I inadvertently discovered many people let slides take over the whole real estate of their monitor. So if you want to continue to see people and the slides, if you click the upper right-hand corner where the arrows are diagonally pointing to each other, you can make that window smaller or any size you want so that you can see people and slides.
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, so we did pull a few slides together, and so Amanda is gonna kick those off, and I will be the slide scroller. So Amanda and Peggy, when you guys are doing your slide, just give me a hint on when to move to the next one.
Great. All right. Well, I guess Re-Imagining Bookstores has an origin story, and that origin story is Kepler's. Back in 2012. As Samantha mentioned, Kepler's was in desperate need of a restructuring in order to remain a vibrant hub in the community. So Praveen Madan came on board and put together I don't know what you called it, Praveen, the transformation team. And I was a part of that. And essentially, we wanted to really rethink what it would be like to run a bookstore that could remain in service to the community. We asked the community what they wanted, and they wanted a bookstore that primarily sold books. Kepler's had previously gone down the path of gifts, et cetera, as a way to increase revenue. And so we gave everybody what they wanted. We brought in more books. But in addition, we changed the way we did business. We became mission-based, which honestly we always had been, but we were kind of saying that part out loud now. We wanted to serve the community. We wanted to deepen literacy. We wanted to be a place for civic engagement and civil conversation. We also needed to increase revenue and change the way we supported the bookstore. That's where that hybrid model came in which we created a nonprofit that could do our literary events. That helped with payroll. We revitalized our membership program, which is really just people wanting to belong and providing financial resources. And then we also wanted to create a workspace that really highlighted the professionalism required in bookselling. We wanted this to be a career for people that they could practice and support their families. Praveen also brought in this idea of democratic engagement and decision making. So essentially, everybody in the bookstore is involved in all decisions that impact their job. They can opt in on how they want to participate, but everybody has a voice within the bookstore. And we also kind of have acted as a beta test for new ideas in bookselling. We have a living wage surcharge that we use to help raise wages. Honestly, I'm missing a couple of other initiatives, but what we like to do is try new things and then share them out with other bookstores so they can learn. So Praveen, I think this slide is really funny, this Steal This Book. We want all bookstores to thrive and succeed. And for those bookstores who want to be mission-based, who want to support their team and support their community, we would love to support that effort. And then I hand off to you, Praveen, I think.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to hand to Peggy pretty quickly. So after about 8 years of really rebooting, transforming Kepler's around 2020, I started to think about, okay, how do we really not just help bookstores one at a time, because we are getting a lot of calls, emails from bookstores all the time, and we were able to share what we had been doing, but really take it to the next level and organize in some way to help bookstores start helping themselves and to each other. So that's when I met Peggy, and Peggy helped us, organize our inaugural gathering, which was super successful, Reimagining Bookstores. So I'm going to hand to Peggy, and she'll tell you guys what she did, why she did, and how she did it, because I think that kind of organizing could be really helpful, over in other countries, as well.
So when Praveen came to me, and as you can tell from what's behind me, books matter to me. I grew up in a house with books in every room and consider them nesting material. It's what makes a house a home. And I actually was pretty skeptical about bookstores surviving. But the more I listened to Praveen, what caught me was something that you heard Amanda talk about, which was a place for civic engagement. I've been working with journalists over the past number of years in, reimagining the system of journalism to be more inclusive, constructive, engaged, and collaborative. And what I was hearing Praveen say about bookstores struck me as very parallel with what has happened with local journalism. That's what drew me in. And so I suggested to him, my work has been about practices that enable diverse groups to deal with complex issues in creative ways. And so when he first approached me about wanting to do something for bookstores, I said, it sounds like you want to create a movement that reinvigorates independent bookstores. Why don't you flip to the next page? What Praveen was showing you there is from the invitation that went out to do Reimagining Bookstores. And I want to talk about what we organized, why we did it, who was involved, what we did, what we accomplished, and how did we go about it. And we started with a small group around why would we do it? Why would we invest time in doing some kind of gathering? And this is what we came to imagine a thriving future for bookstores, their employees, and their communities. I think you've heard those themes already. And that is that's the bedrock that informed every other decision we made. So we spent some time beginning to get some of the different players of the system together to define that why. And the why informs, given that why, who needs to be there, which of course can also reshape the why. And part of the work in, how do you change the social system or any organization? Part of it is to involve the people of the system so that it is not something passed down on high, which is easier to do in an organization and impossible to do in a community. So we thought, who makes up the system of thriving bookstores? And the obvious ones are bookstore owners and staff. But the people we came to who also had a stake in the outcomes were readers. Interesting for me, real estate people, because one of the biggest expenses, and if you'd go back.
Sorry, I had the wrong key.
One of the biggest expenses, of course, is the real estate. We had journalists in the room who write a book about bookstores, which enabled the story to be shared. And then funders, because again, part of the Kepler story and part of the learning there was the idea of foundation funding. And just kind of a bit of backstory of that. There's a rubric that I use when thinking about who makes up the system that comes from one of our colleagues who was involved, Sandra Janoff, who created a process called Future Search. In thinking about who makes up the system, you want the people who are in with authority, resources, information, and need, resources, expertise, and information and need. And then I also think about the demographics. So many of bookstores in the US are white owned. And it was important to us to make sure that as we did our inviting, we drew from different geographies, different gender, different generations, a mix of race and ethnicity, and different economic demographics. So that was who we thought about when putting out the invitation. And I'd say, the what we accomplished was we connected the network of people who cared about bookstores by making it visible to itself. And this is getting a bit ahead, but kind of the punchline of the things we accomplished is people came away refreshed, clearer about what mattered to them, and their own next steps. People found partners. The number of people who I heard say, I thought I was alone, suddenly found there were others with similar struggles. And a number of projects that you'll be hearing about in a moment emerged and a community began to form. So those were the kinds of things that came out of that initial gathering, and the how of the gathering, which is on this next slide, is the heart of it. We used a practice called open space technology, and open space enables diverse groups to self-organize around what matters to it. And we use that because the idea of having speakers, when you're trying to reimagine, there really are no experts. And so this is a way to invite people to bring the expertise and perspective that they have together into a setting where the conversations that take place are set by the people who care. And so with that question of that drew people there, we use this particular practice to help people self-organize. And the elements of it are here in this picture. You know, it's since we did this online, it was a virtual circle. But we created a bulletin board, if you will, by inviting people. We met for 2 days, 3 hours a day, which gave us 6 time for 6 breakout sessions. And we invited people to choose the topics and questions, put their name by it, choose a time, and the people who were interested in that topic would attend the session. So we used the self-organizing breakout room capability of Zoom. And then the principles of open space are there on the right of this chart. Whoever comes are the right people. Whatever happens is the only thing that could have. When it starts is the right time. When it's over, it's over. And applied what's called the law of 2 feet, which is basically a reminder that it takes passion and responsibility for things to get done. And so this is an invitation for people to use their virtual feet to take them to the conversations that mattered to them. And one thing I say about the who showed up, when we were planning this, Praveen said he typically got about 100 people or so when he would do a talk about Teplers. So we were figuring 100, somewhere in that range. 660 people registered. We were stunned. And it meant some scrambling behind the scenes to handle that volume in Zoom. And what turned out to be our biggest limit was Google Docs was where we put the notes. And it turns out there's a limit of 100 people in a Google Doc. So, you know, we found a way to break into 3 cohorts, but still give visibility to everyone so people could go to the sessions that they wanted to attend. And I'll stop there and turn it to Praveen to talk about the ripples.
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, so if all of you have never attended an open space gathering or a session, it really has to be experienced to feel and the difference, because it's like going to a conference where there's no preset agenda, there's no panel discussions, there's no keynote speeches, and there is only one purpose that everyone is showing up for, and then people just show up and they basically start organizing who wants to go in what conversation, who wants to host a conversation, who wants to attend a conversation. So it's really just giving the power to the people who are there to organize in whichever way you want, and it's just revolutionary. I'm not so much trying to sell you guys on open space because it's a free thing available, but Peggy is actually very deeply connected in the global community of open space practitioners. And if there was any interest over where all of you are, Peggy would be happy to connect you with the local open space practitioners, experts in your area, to see if they might be interested in organizing open space gatherings there. Peggy is also the subject matter expert on other organizing methods, not just open space, because Peggy's first book, the Change Handbook, basically has summaries of, Peggy, is it like 60 different organizing methods? Yeah. So, and open space is just one of the 60. So if you want to talk about the other 59 organizing methods, Peggy's your person for that too. Okay. So to moving on, what's happened since then? So this very successful gathering happened in October of 2021. It's been 2 years. We got a ton of media, and many of the journalists have continued to follow and write about the developments. And we'll give you a quick snapshot of just some of the main things that are happening, today. The first, I think, big thing that's happened in the last 2 years is the Emerson Collective, which was founded by Steve Jobs' widow, Laureen Powell Jobs, and has really billions of dollars of philanthropic investments and appetite for that. and they have a combination of both a philanthropic side as well as a venture capital side, where they're investing not just in nonprofits but also in for-profit companies that are making a social impact. So they have started working with bookstores, and there's been two major articles that describe what the Emerson Collective is doing. One was in the Stanford Social Innovation Review in May, and the second was also in May in the Publishers Weekly. And this is an excerpt from the Publishers Weekly article that basically describes what the Emerson Collective is doing. They basically are, if I can summarize in my words, they are basically finding bookstores that will be good candidates for setting up hybrid business models similar to Kepler's, with a for-profit and a non-profit arm. And they're supporting them with grants, they're supporting them with legal advice, they're supporting them with other training and mentoring and other resources. And you'll see it talks about that they have a portfolio of about 20 bookstores they're supporting right now, and they aim to grow it to about 30 bookstores. Kepler's is one of those bookstores. We were asked to mentor some of the other bookstores early on, so we are just delighted by Emerson Collective's entry into the space. And while Emerson Collective is the only known institutional investor who's now supporting bookstores without any expectation of a financial return, only for the social impact bookstores are having, there are other individuals who are doing that now in various communities in the US also. For instance, there's a gentleman by the name of John Valpy. He's working with 6 or 7 bookstores in the Boston and the New England area. So I think just the opening up on new funding sources and this kind of recognition that the old traditional retail model for bookstores is crumbling and doesn't have a great future, and new models are needed. I think that's one of the greatest developments. And also to clarify, we're not trying to take credit for all these independent initiatives. We know about a lot of them. We support them. We are more integrally involved in some. We are less involved in others. So really, the 5 or 6 things I'm going to tell you about, the major ripples that have happened since our gathering, they're all really just independent initiatives that other people are leading. And sometimes, we are leading an initiative, but the Emerson Collective one is really being led by Emerson Collective people. And while we are part of it and delighted to play the role we are, we are able to play. It's really their leadership that needs the credit for doing what they're doing. The second major ripple that's come out is Feroz, who was one of our patrons and customers at Kepler's, attended part of the Re-Imagining Bookstores gathering and got he's a lifelong bibliophile, author, loves bookstores. And he came up with this idea that we need to get a documentary film made about talking specifically about the future of bookstores, because there's a lot of documentaries talking about bookstores, their past, their history, the nostalgia about bookstores, but there's nothing really talking about the future of bookstores. So he went and recruited Doug Rowland, who's an Oscar-nominated filmmaker from Los Angeles. And Feroz is, again, Feroz, this is the initiative that Feroz and Doug are leading. Amanda and I have supported it, but Feroz and Doug are really leading it. That's Doug, if you can see my mouse. This is John Markoff, the technology column. He used to be the technology columnist for New York Times, being interviewed for this documentary film. So Feroz is the leading fundraiser for this effort. Doug is the director, and we're hoping this documentary will be finalized and out in the market in 2024. So that's another big ripple that's come out. And let me see. Oh, why is my screen not? Oh, sorry. Oh, so here are a list of some of the other initiatives. I covered number 1 and number 2. Number 3, Peggy again introduced us to Kathy Minardi, who runs an organization called the Whole School Leadership on the East Coast in the US. And we've been working with Kathy to develop leadership training programs for people working in bookstores. And recently, the Professional Bookseller School, which is a separate nonprofit in the U.S., has also gotten involved. So we are hopeful that in 2024, that the whole school leadership and Professional Bookseller School will be able to launch, leadership, training programs specifically for people who are looking to build and manage next generation bookstores, in the U.S. Number 4, 3 people met at Re-Imagining Bookstores gathering who had never known each other before, and they formed such a strong affinity to each other and to this cause of helping bookstores thrive and be successful in the future, that they've been meeting literally every week for the last 2 years. And in addition to just continue to meet, one is the chairman of a publishing company, one is so the 2 main people are Steve Wax, who's the chairman of Heyday Books, and Lisa Urich, who runs Franklin Fixtures in Tennessee, and also opened an independent bookstore recently. And there was an author who was also working with them for a while, Wendy. So Steve and Lisa, what they've done is they've actually built a cohort of bookstores that they're training on best practices in storytelling, marketing, and displays. And they have about 20 or 30 bookstores who are going through the training program that they've developed. So it's a training program, it's a community. They're all supporting and helping each other. So that's again an independent initiative. And then the last couple of things, Peggy, Amanda, I, and a few others, we continue to provide ad hoc support to bookstores who need information about next generation models, and we have an email listserv at bookstores@groups.io for staying connected. It's open to anyone. So that's what's been going on. Let me see how we're doing on time. I'll send out a link to this presentation to Sam and Evan, so you're welcome to use it, embed it, so people can use these links for further exploration. And we have our email information also for Amanda, Peggy, and myself if anyone has any follow-up questions. So with that, I'm going to stop the share and turn it over to back to Sam and Evan.
Thank you so much, Praveen. Okay, well, I've got about 4 pages of notes and questions this end, but I'm not going to hog chair's privilege. So I can see Will. Welcome, Will. I mentioned you at the beginning. It's lovely to see you. And I'm sure other people have got questions too. So who would like to kick off with a question or a comment or an observation or anything at all?
Thank you for this.
Julie looks like you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. My question is really where's the ABA in relationship to all of this? And I mean, like they're one of the big kind of legacy organizations, and I see them not mentioned. And of course, some of the people that I study had were both involved in leadership of ABA, and also were very critical of ABA during the 1980s with different things. And so I'm wondering, where is the ABA in all of this? And also, what kind of thoughts do you have about it seems like we're in a moment of change, and some like new organizations are being founded, some legacy organizations are finding themselves less relevant. Do you have any sort of thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So your first question, Julie, about where is the ABA in all this, I think you'd really have to ask the ABA that question. We could only speculate. I'm not sure the speculation will be all that helpful. My view from just watching and working with ABA for the last 15 years that I've been in bookselling is that they're very deeply seem invested in the view that everything is just hunky-dory and great with the traditional for-profit bookstore model. And while they have more recently started almost reluctantly accepting the need for other models to be tried, and even taken some baby steps to organize a couple of webinars and discussions around that. They're definitely not a fast mover or an early adopter, for you use the technology adoption, kind of a term. Then they're not an early adopter of this view that the traditional models are, increasingly very limited and almost already starting to crumble, and new models are desperately needed. So our philosophy has been that, we don't need permission of the ABA to do what the kind of organizing and work we are trying to do. And this is really, really, we're not trying to build an organization to compete or challenge, any of the trade associations or anyone else. We are organizing very much like a network, which means there's not much of a central organization. We encourage, the philosophy of let 1,000 flowers bloom. Anyone is welcome to start an initiative. Anyone is welcome to, host a conversation. We are here to basically support and connect people who are doing interesting, innovative, forward-looking work in the service of, an exciting future for bookstores. So we, basically view ourselves as, kind of like the Linux people who are leading an open source movement. We don't worry too much about the Microsoft and IBMs of the world who are trying to sell proprietary software to companies. So that's kind of the answer to your question.
Praveen, I would also add, though, that the ABA tends to focus on very traditional arguments. Amazon is bad. Booksellers need like higher margin, bring in higher margin items to make your bookstore more successful. They do talk about how successful bookstores are without bringing up living wages as a criteria of that success. And so I do think that Re-Imagining, we are trying to push the conversation forward on the things that we think matter, and to try and provide all of those new bookstores that are coming into play, that are mission-based, that are women-owned or minority-owned, in underserved communities or literary deserts, that there's a path forward that doesn't rely on just retail selling of books.
And to build on that, I think key to Kepler's initial success, and part of what attracted me, as I mentioned earlier, is the need for civic spaces for people to convene. I think only gets bigger. I was actually in downtown Seattle recently, for the first time in quite a while. And with COVID and people working from home, real estate developers are in serious trouble. There are so many empty buildings. And I was saying, trying to imagine, what does the future look like when more selling goes online? We need gathering spaces. And bookstores, by their, kind of historic nature of being places of thought and ideas and conversation, are strong potentials for being anchors in civic hubs as the nature of our cities change.
Looks like Anna.
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, Anna.
Go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, thanks for this. I'm going to ask a question very selfishly for my own sort of interests. I guess I'm wondering, I heard Amanda mention, the ABA seems very concerned as like, with Amazon. But in your slides, I also saw it said that there's an investment here in your own sort of initiative and networks to Amazon-proof immersive experiences, to have Amazon-proof immersive experiences. And so I guess I'm wondering, is that mostly just centered on having, like, for example, what Peggy was just talking about, these spaces for civic discussion, right? Is it places for people to meet? Or how does Amazon figure into what you think how you're envisioning what you're doing. Is it just sort of the villain of the story, or is there a more like nuanced or complicated version? Because I know what a big specter Amazon is in book selling, especially in the US. So.
Yeah, so if I can take a stab at that, and great question. Amazon, obviously, we can't have any conversation about book selling without talking about Amazon, just because they're so big and so pervasive everywhere. Our view is Amazon is basically a technology company, and they're exceedingly good at transactions. Will never be a technology company, will never get as efficient and cheap and transactions as Amazon is. So instead of constantly talking to people about Amazon is bad, we are good, you should not shop at Amazon, and guilting people into almost shopping into bookstores because somehow Amazon is evil, we don't really buy that. We think it's smarter and just more practical to come up with strategies in terms of what is our value proposition, and how is it that we're different and better than Amazon in certain respects. Like, what is it that we do that Amazon can't do or will never do and will never be as good at it. And for me, that comes down to like three things. One is relationships. Amazon is not a relationship company. You want to talk to a human being at Amazon, good luck. So at Kepler's, you call the phone and a human being is going to pick up, and you can actually have a real human conversation. You walk into the store, you can talk to a real human being. So, and it's not just transactional conversations. We really pride ourselves in building deep relationships with all of our stakeholders, our readers, our authors, our investors, our donors, our publishers, because those are real human, authentic, deep relationships. And it'll be hard for anyone to say that they have a deep, authentic human relationship with Amazon. So people like that. We are social animals. People like having relationships with real humans. So that's one. Second, you touched on the immersive experiences. Absolutely, Amazon is Amazon is trying to sell a lot of Prime videos and audiobooks and everything else. But the kind of immersive experience we are talking about is 2 days ago, we hosted 1,100 people at the Fox Theater in Redwood City who were there to listen to two business authors. We had Adam Grant talking about his new book on hidden potential, and we had Michael Lewis, who's just written a book about FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. And the two authors were in conversation, and we had 1,100 people there who had paid pretty decent ticket prices and bought books to come listen to this real conversation, and to be able to ask questions, and to be able to sit shoulder to shoulder and see who else is here and what am I going to learn by being here. And that's the kind of immersive experience, and that just one kind of immersive experience. We have like 50 types of events, community gatherings, things going on all the time, and that's a lot of the work we're doing through the nonprofit, our Kepler's the Ray Foundation. So that's the second. So first is relationships, second is experiences, and third is just services. Just being able to serve people in a way that the kind of service they will never get from Amazon. So we have B2B relationships where we have companies in Silicon Valley where Kepler's is based, and they come to us and they say, I want to buy 1,000 copies of this book for this conference. And they can easily try to buy those books from Amazon. They can easily try to buy those books directly from a publisher, but they come to Kepler's for two reasons. One is they want a deep level of service, because these books sometimes they have to be signed by the author, sometimes they have to be shipped to multiple locations, sometimes there are issues with what needs to be done with the book, and that requires, again, a human being you trust who's going to provide you the service to make sure the books are going to get where you need them to get in the way, shape, form, condition that you need them. So so we have a very healthy B2B business we've been able to build by being just very service oriented. So that's an example of a service. So I think relationships, experiences, services, we think Amazon will never be able to compete with us, because we just do it better than Amazon will ever be able to do. Amanda, Peggy, anything to add to that?
I would just add that we just don't put any energy into fighting that fight. Amazon has done a really amazing job with the ebook, and we're really interested in readers being readers and gaining more readers. So I think I think that's been an important thing, and definitely something that makes us different also than the ABA. Back to that whole thing is we're just not putting our energy there.
Yeah, at one point we surveyed our customers at Kepler's, this was several years ago, and we found that more than 80% of our customers have Amazon Prime accounts and they shop at Amazon too. And we were just like, this battle is over. Trying to convince them that they should stop, 80% of our customers should stop shopping at Amazon. I mean, that's just not practical. It's never going to happen. So we have to embrace the fact that our customers will go to Amazon for certain things and they will come to us for certain things. And all we can do is focus on the things we do and do them really, really well. So they keep coming back and they keep coming back for more and more.
Something I'll add. I live in a different city, and it was actually just earlier this year that I finally met the people I'd been working with for the last several years in person and saw Kepler's. And one of the things that struck me as the fierce loyalty of, Praveen and I had gone to a cafe that's right next to the bookstore, and the number of people who said, "Hi, Praveen," who were sitting there and sitting down, and a couple we ended up talking to for probably 10 minutes. And beyond that, I mean, Kepler, if I mention Kepler's to someone in passing, anybody who went to school in that area knows Kepler's and loves Kepler's. So there is something about the relationship that the bookstore has established with people who love it enough that they fiercely want to be sure that it stays viable. I found quite impressive.
Yeah, so sometimes I mention in kind of a partially joking but partially serious that Kepler's was founded in 1955. So we've been here for almost 70 years. We were here before Amazon and before Facebook, and we'll be here after Amazon and after Facebook. Will, go ahead.
Thank you.
Will. I suppose I come at it from that same feeling, essentially, that I work at, I now co-own a small bookshop in a village in the Lake District. And we often get people talking about Amazon, and it's never the fight we need to have. Completely understand we do our own thing. They exist too. But there's a gray area that's growing for us, which is very difficult to articulate to our customer base, which is that area of self-publishing and titles which are locked into the Amazon environment. And even when they're written by readers and writers on our doorstep, who themselves seem to expect that we can stock and sell those books. And we're having real difficulty serving our customer base and the authors in explaining how we can't really do much in that area for them because we don't have trade terms to enable us to stock those books. So I don't know whether that's an area that's proving a problem, whether you've had that same experience too, but it seems to be growing as an issue, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean, self-publishing has taken off in the last 5-7 years. Then the number of books that are self-published every year exceeds the number of books that are coming out of regular mainstream publishers. And then you also have a lot of these hybrid publishers who are doing some combination of traditional publishing and self-publishing. So that's definitely a trend that's here to stay. I don't think we've really figured out great ways to work with self-publisher authors. We do try, and we do, occasionally we'll do an author event for our self-published authors. We do carry a limited number of self-published books, but the sheer volume of that's happening has been impossible to keep up with. So that I think will that's certainly a prime area where I would love to see an initiative where 2, 3, 5, 10 bookstores get together with a handful of self-published authors and really try to craft a set of terms, a model through which we can better serve the self-published authors. But it needs some work, and I don't know if anybody's really putting in the work here, but I would love to see that happen. Amanda, you have any thoughts on self-publishing?
Well, we do have that conversation all of the time, and our insider comment is just that there's books, everyone can print their own book. It's different to be published. I think published suggests that someone else has read the book, for example, and maybe helped select some words. But one of the things we're talking about in the store is really trying to do like an education for writers to let them understand better what the marketplace looked like. I've talked to so many writers who really just wanted to get their book out there in the world. They wanted to create art, they wanted to share it. And as soon as it was out in the world, printed, all of a sudden it came down to, well, I need to get the most money that I can. And so they choose distribution like Amazon, or in the US, Ingram, terms that are terrible for their local bookstore. No, I cannot bring your book in at a 10% margin that's not returnable. That's not viable for us. And so, and they're making decisions based on 75 cents or something. And so I think that would be a huge win for everybody, is for people to understand how we can support everybody. Because certainly there's only so much real estate in a bookstore, and even Pulitzer Prize winning books aren't on the shelf if they have a poor sales record. So why someone thinks that their story about their goat is going to make it, I don't know. Anyway.
I'll add one other thing. You know, as somebody who is a reader, but not involved in the backstory of bookstores. When I came out of Re-Imagining Bookstores, I started making Amazon my last purchase place of choice, and I had an interesting story about that. Shortly after I went to order a book, unconsciously went to Amazon, then remembered, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. So I went to my local bookstore, having already seen the price that Amazon would charge me. The local bookstore was almost twice as much. And so I sent Praveen a note saying, how do you deal with this? And he wrote back, and I will never forget this. The first thing you said was, Amazon doesn't care about losing money on books, that they can sell a book for less than we acquire it for. And that made me mad. It's predatory, and it upped my willingness to spend more to support local bookstores and not buy through Amazon. And so my message as an outsider is, I think one of the things I would love to see bookstores do is make visible, educate us of the situation, because I am sure I'm not alone in being willing to spend more to buy a book in order to counter that situation to a degree. You'll never completely do it, but at least I can make a conscious choice. And that was something I wouldn't have known if I didn't have a bookseller friend to ask that question of.
Thank you, Peggy. That's exactly it. I think we'll all make a choice, a baseline, isn't it? We can all make a choice. I'm conscious of the time as the chair, so I'm going to hand over to Eben for perhaps the final question, and Eben to wrap up, if that's okay with you. Thanks, Eben.
Yeah, okay. I was interested, just following on from what people have just been saying, and I have my own Amazon story from back in the 90s when it first became a thing, but people didn't really know about it yet. People would come into our bookstore looking for a book. And I remember my father telling people that, I'm not sure if we've got it, I'll check, and go into the other room, look it up on Amazon, say, sorry, it's in the other warehouse, I can have it for you tomorrow. And ordering it quickly from Amazon and selling it to the customer the next day. Things changed. But talking to booksellers from the 90s, a lot of them have these sort of stories where they started off taking advantage of Amazon, and Amazon ended up taking advantage of them over the longer term. So it's been a really interesting evolution of that relationship. But also talking to booksellers, I was really interested to hear you saying almost that Amazon is part of the ecosystem of bookselling. It's not the enemy. It's just another person selling books in a different way to a different market. And it reminded me of the indie shop local campaigns, where I know several bookstores I've talked to back in New England who say they refuse to ask people to shop local, to come to them just because they're local. They want people to come to them because they're offering a service. They are offering that relationship, they're offering the service, they're offering these different things. And I'm just wondering, how viable is that as a business model, that saying that we are going to compete on something that, I don't know, as the alternative to Amazon, because it's looking in your networking, you have the owners, the staff, the publishers, the readers, the realtors. Realtors really important. You didn't have the community. You didn't have local businesses and the like, which I thought was interesting. So what is the relationship between the bookstore and the community in that network?
No, we certainly did. In fact, that might have been just a typo that got left out. Like, we have a very good, healthy, synergistic relationship with the cafe that's next to Kepler's, because having a great, wonderful open air cafe next to the bookstore just provides such a richer experience for the community. We do a ton of work with the local schools, local libraries as part of the nonprofit. So definitely, the local connection and just being able to work with the local businesses is super, and nonprofit and schools is super important. Back even to your point about the taking a stand on which kind of customers you want, or why you think your customers should value you. I mean, personally, I would say that's kind of like self-limiting. I don't really care why customer, which reason customers are shopping at, Kepler's. Some are shopping for the immediacy, some are shopping to support a local business. Some are shopping because they like the fact that we support living wages for our staff. Some are shopping because, they like the curated tables we have of books where they can find something very quickly. There's probably, hundreds of different reasons why, hundreds of different segments of customers are shopping. We want them all. So
if I had another question, it would be about the living wage and how you're managing that. That's gold dust if we can get that happening in bookstores. Absolutely. But I think that takes us to the end of our time here. So I wanted to thank the three of you, and for not just for this, but for the work that you've been doing and building up these networks, and the open source system that you're modeling that you're putting together. I think it's really exactly the sort of stuff that's needed. You mentioned, somebody said, I thought I was alone in your network. During COVID, the Booksellers Association pushed local networking, and booksellers we've got friends, we have people here, I'm not on my own. It was really such an important part of what we can do in terms of bringing people together. So thank you very much for that. But just a quick word for the next of these sessions is going to be not until January, the 26th of January, when we're having people talking about bookselling in India, the proper and the parallel. So this may be of interest to you guys as well. So hopefully you can tune into that one as the audience this time.
Awesome.
I really enjoyed this.
But before we ring off, I see three of you if you have a reflection of some nugget you're taking from this, please put it in the chat. That gives us great feedback on what matters to people.
Okay, thank you. And so
thank you all so much. And if you can stop the recording a bit.
I can. There's a button here. I'm gonna stop recording.